All right, crew, what's up? Welcome back to the PT on Ice Daily Show. I am Dr. Jeff Moore, currently serving as the CEO of ICE, and always thrilled to be here on a Leadership Thursday, which of course is a Gut Check Thursday. The Open is over. We are back in business with Gut Check Thursday, and we've got a doozy. We've got every 2 minutes, you're going to do 15 calories on the bike. And then you're going to do as many thrusters as possible in the remainder of that 2-minute time period at the weights of 135 for the gents and 95 for the gals. Then you're going to keep repeating that, right? Every 2 minutes, you've got to get your 15, 12 cal on the bike done before you start knocking out thrusters. The workout is over at 30 thrusters. Okay, I just did this the other day. I finished in the 7th round, 13 minutes and change. It's rough. There's not a lot of rest. By not a lot, I mean none. Think about scaling that weight if you're not getting over 5 reps in those first rounds. If you don't feel that's doable, maybe knock a few pounds off, or you might be there for a while because that bike only chews up more time as you get more fatigue. So give that a bit of thought. It's a wonderful workout. Make sure you tag us, Ice Physio, Ice Train. Love watching you do all these workouts and sharing them across our social media platforms. Team, welcome to Gut Check Thursday. Welcome to Gut Check Thursday, and welcome to Leadership Thursday, where I want to share a huge hack on mentorship that I think is so underappreciated. So the title of today's episode is Optimization via Degrees of Separation. Speaking of mentorship, and the hack that I want to share with you is how to recognize who you should learn from and who you should be teaching. An area that is incredibly plagued by low intention. It's the organization of that is not something people give a ton of thought to. It's plagued by low intention and one very common mistake. So let's open with that common mistake. The common mistake in the space is that most people think they want to learn from the star player or the leader of the organization or the person who they recognized that brought their attention to that area. They think they want to learn from that key person. You almost never do. Who you might want to work in their system, right? Like that absolutely makes sense. You might want to move towards their position. That totally makes sense. But who you want to learn from is very rarely that individual. You want to find someone who can over deliver for you, and it will almost never be that person. The principle that we're talking about in today's episode is that you can talk across a river, you can yell across a lake, but you can't hear each other across the ocean. What I mean by that is the farther apart you are in knowledge and experience, the less effective the mentoring relationship. Now, the classic example here is when somebody says, oh, I had this great physics teacher, right? They were brilliant, but they couldn't relate to us. They couldn't teach us well as entry-level students, okay? This is not because of their intelligence. Generally, that's what it's blamed on, right? This person was too smart to be able to relate to us. That's almost never the case, right? It's because of separation. So many kinds of separation that make it more like an ocean than a river. Examples of that separation are the amount of knowledge this person has. That is not so much speaking to their intelligence, but they have simply accumulated a tremendous amount of knowledge over so many years that they can't understand anymore what it's like to look at a new concept in the absence of having that knowledge, because they have so much and they've had it for so long. They can't remember what it was like not to have it and what trying to learn a new concept feels like in the absence of it. They simply cannot put themselves back in that position. They can't relate to your phase of life. They can't remember what it was like when their other parts of their life beyond the professional stuff looked and felt like yours does, because theirs looks nothing like that anymore. Other responsibilities. These people, that physics professor, for example, is thinking about their research. They're thinking about building their team, right? Well above and beyond the classroom. There's other areas that not only have some of their attention, but arguably probably have more of their attention, because as they've gained seniority, that is where their unique role is probably most dependent upon. So that's what they're thinking about all the time. It's where a lot of their focus is. Well, when you add in all of these degrees of separation, the amount of knowledge, the phase of life, all these other responsibilities, that's what creates the ocean. And getting across that for a quality mentorship relationship is simply impossible. I can give you a personal example of this, okay? My most effective phase of clinical teaching, of actually teaching physical therapists how to get better at physical therapy, was when I was in the clinic about 25 hours a week. That was the sweet spot. I remember being in that sweet spot. I was 1 degree of separation away from the people that I was teaching. Like when I was done with the course, 10 hours later, I was facing the exact same problems in the same setting of the people that were teaching. Yet I had enough time out of clinic that I could mold and form my course and put good intention into the content. That was the sweet spot. I was just removed enough from full-time clinic that I could really craft the message, but I was in it enough and I was still in phase of life enough that I totally understood exactly what these people needed to hear and what was going to have the greatest impact. When my role in the company shifted in ICE, my ability to teach clinical content noticeably declined. And it was obvious to me because when I would watch Zach and Jordan, the guys who took over and now lead the spine division, when I watched them teach, I was like, ooh, that's better. That's better. Because they had all the antidotes. You could feel the fact that they just faced the same problem. It was so much more relatable. All the small changes in the profession, they were in and are in lockstep with, and you could just feel the real. And that made it come across so much more applicable and so much more relatable. So I noticed as I began to move away and get a bit more separation, my ability to relate and be effective was significantly altered. This should guide you. This principle should guide who you look to for mentorship and who you look to mentor. You want the person who was where you are 2 to 3 years ago. That's the sweet spot. When you get in this organization you're excited about, you do not want to learn from the most veteran clinician, person, team member. You want to learn very specifically from the person who was where you currently are 2 to 3 years ago. That's the sweet spot. So don't get enamored on trying to maybe look at it as reaching up, right? And try to make that relationship. You really want to reach up, but just one ladder rung, because that's going to be the river. That's going to be the most effective communication mentorship relationship. Now, similarly, you want to teach people who are only 2 to 3 years behind you, who are in situations that you very recently were in. So give that some really serious thought, right? Is there somebody you're currently teaching, leading, that really you should be passing that off to somebody who's a bit more closely connected to where all of those different components in that person's life are existing? Have you been hanging on to some relationships too long, or does the system need to be reshuffled where you're a bit more intentional about that time domain when you're looking at these mentoring relationships? This is not, by the way, just true in professional or clinical practice, right? It's true literally everywhere. Think about it in the gym. The athlete who just learned muscle ups is often the most effective person at helping you get your first one. Why? Because when you ask the person who knocks out 12 to 15 unbroken without thinking about it, that last part's the problem. They don't have to think about it, right? So it's very hard because they kind of say things like, I don't know, man, I just do it, right? Don't mishear me. There are some amazing experienced coaches that have a truly unique ability to still break it down for you. But there is something to be said that once it gets so natural, once it requires so little thought, it's a bit tough to instruct somebody who is just learning their very first one. It is so true in music, right? When you're learning the guitar, somebody who just mastered their scales is an amazing person to show you how to sit and how to hold the guitar, the fundamentals. Because again, The person who has true virtuosity is going to say things like, dude, I don't know, man. I just kind of feel it out, right? I can play it by ear. Well, cool. I can't, right? So right now, I need somebody who can understand what it's like to not be able to. My call to action for all of you on Leadership Thursday is to begin to evaluate your mentorship systems using the 1 degree of separation rule. You want people teaching people who were where the learner is just a couple years ago. When you go into a system, don't think it's awesome to learn from the person who's been around the longest. Think it's awesome to learn from the person who most recently solved your specific problem. And that person was where you are 2 to 3 years ago. Change these mentorship relationships from a time domain and you will drastically alter their efficiency. Give it some thought, team. We are off for Easter weekend, and then we are coming back with 13 live courses next weekend. So we are all over the map. Actually, the next couple weekends, we've got about a dozen or more courses, tons of spots to check out PT on Ice live classes. Go to ptonice.com. You'll see them all right there. April 6th, 7th, the following week, tons of options. Wherever you are, we probably are. Jump into all the fun, team. Have an awesome Thursday. We'll see you next week.